Man, if I do that, it'll be the greatest video ever made. Oh, welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. You guys stay sneaking up on me, homie. But as you guys know, we do have the chess Olympiad going on right now. So I do have America versus Argentina, or United States versus Argentina. I shortened it up on the display. But we do have Wesley versus Leandro Crisa. And this is round number 5. So all of my people coming from the Philippines, I would say maraming salamat. Anybody who is coming from Argentina, I would say muchas gracias. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, son. All right, so we got the move E4, best by test, E5. We got knight F3, we see knight C6, bishop B5. We got the move A6, and then we do see the move bishop A4. So we have what is called the Roy López Morphy defense Columbus variation. You pretty much, when you get to this position, you kind of have two options. You go bishop takes C6, which is known as the exchange variation, or you got bishop A4. Bishop A4 keeps some pieces on the board, and it kind of keeps a little bit of like, dynamic stuff going on. So that is what most high-level players choose. We got knight going to F6. We got the move D3. It is okay to castle in this position. If you just want to simply castle, the E4 pawn is not hanging because you do have rook E1 after all of that. But we do see D3. We got the move D6. We got the move C3. So the thing about this, even though this is an E4 game, you do have a lot of maneuvering, kind of as if it was a D4 opening, which is not very, usual in E4, openings. But we do see bishop E7. We got castles by white, castles by black. We got rook E1. You do want to push D4 at some point if you are white. So going rook to E1 is never a bad decision. Just making sure that our E4 pawn is solid. We got rook to E8. We do see knight B to D2. We got bishop back to F8. Knight down to F1. H6. And you kind of see what I mean. We're kind of doing a lot of maneuvering right now in this position. There's not like a bunch of slicing attack going on. So we're just trying to get our pieces set on the best squares and then attack when we are ready to go. We do see knight to G3, just making sure that we reinforce this E4 pawn as much as we absolutely can. We got the move B5. We got bishop back to B3, A5. We got D4, and then we actually see the novelty of the game this soon, and it is A4. Basically, black is saying, I don't like your bishop where it is. This is a really, really nice diagonal for this bishop to be on. Since this rook has moved, it does kind of weaken F7 just a little bit. So sometimes it is beneficial to knock this bishop off of this long diagonal. So we do see bishop going back to C2. There's a little bit of a slight drawback to this move, though, and we see Wesley identify that immediately. We got bishop going to G4, and then bishop does go to D3. It's like, why not? This pawn was left behind right here. Let's see if we can gobble it up, man. I think I'm a little hungry, bro. So we got rook to B8. We do see queen to E2, just adding pressure to B5. We got the move B4. So it's kind of like make or break time in this position. There was also a bishop to D7 that you can do, and there's like some tactics going on. Yes, we do see the move B4. We got bishop to B5, and not only is this hitting this undefended knight, it is hitting slightly the A4 pawn behind it. We got bishop back to D7. We got D5. We do see knight to D4. You got to know your tactics, homie. It might probably not come to you, this move, because it kind of looks like, dude, I'm just putting it on a square that's already defended by a pawn. But, you are undefending this bishop. You are also hitting this queen right here. So it is all good in the neighborhood. So like I said, we did see knight D4. We got knight taking D4, pawn taking D4. You have to make sure you take back the right way here, because if you take back with the bishop, the knight does have an ability to take, and you've just won a piece for nothing, and then we're all sad and we go home, and that's it. But we got pawn taking, we got bishop taking D7, queen taking D7, and then we do see the move pawn takes D4. And we have actually reached a position. There is a nice tactical shot that, Crisa has in the position. So if you want to pause the video and try to guess that move, go ahead and do so. All right. Getting my hydration rolling, bro. Okay, so for those of you that noticed, this rook is opposite this queen. And you know how, well, I'm telling you guys all the time, every day. I'm like, bro, always put rooks on opposite sides of the queen, because you never know when this might open up. So in this situation right here, this pawn is actually pinned to this queen. We don't really want to take it, so taking advantage of that, we go ahead and see knight takes D5. So if you guess knight takes D5, gangster you, because you are noticing that this pawn really doesn't want to take back. I mean, you can always go like this and say, hey man, I got a whole piece, but then you're going to be dropping your queen, and then everything is not all good in the neighborhood no more. So after we see knight takes d5, we do see the move bishop to d2. We got knight going to f6, and then we do see queen going to f3. And you do kind of have to be a little careful here because we do have a knight f5, maybe knight takes h6 tactic alive in the position. So seeing that Krista does go queen to g4 and just offers a trade of queens, really, I mean, there's kind of, you can kind of avoid it, but you're going to be putting your queen kind of in a passive area. So we do see queen taking g4, knight taking g4, and then we do see the move f3. And coming up, we are going to see a nice idea. Knight goes to f6, and we actually see the move d5, which is a good structural move. You see this nice, beautiful pawn chain right here. But more importantly, it is backwards. It's making this c7 pawn backwards, and you are on a half-open file. So on half-open files, you absolutely want a pawn to be backwards because you can pile up on it, which we see coming up. We do see the move g6. We got rook a to c1. And like I said, I mean, this pawn really can't too much push. And I mean, we do have a lot of pressure coming on this b4 pawn as well, stuff like that. So we actually see knight to d7 in this position right here. And this just does allow the pawn, the rook to take on c7. But going back, you might kind of think like, okay, like, can I go like rook e to c8? Like, can I just defend the pawn? Well, you can try to do that, but you would be seeing rook to c4. And this is where the other problem comes into play. You're either doubling right here, or you're just going to simply snap this pawn for free. So you kind of are having a little bit too many problems going on in the position. So knight to d7, trying to redirect either to e5 or c5 was definitely much better. We do see rook takes c7, knight goes down to c7, trying to better the knight. We got rook over to d1, we got bishop to g7, tickling b2. We do see bishop to f4. We have a couple of exchanges. Bishop takes b2, we do see bishop taking d6. We got the move b3, and this pawn can actually be kind of dangerous, man, if you're not careful, bro. Even though it would be doubled, we do kind of have a pawn that's really, really close to queening. So you always have to look out for that stuff. We got rook taking c5, pawn taking a2. And then, like I said, I mean, there really isn't a whole lot that's keeping black from playing a1 equals a queen. We do see bishop taking d8, bishop going up to d4 with check. And this is a nice move because it is going to get you your exchange back because you just gave it. So we got king going to f1, bishop takes c5, and we do see the move bishop going to e5. And this might look kind of strange because you're like, man, this is just rook takes e5, right? Like why would I just put the bishop on a bad square? Well, the problem that you are looking at in the situation is, let's say you go bishop to f4. Because you're like, hey, man, I'm going to save my bishop. Everything is good in the neighborhood. You would be looking at bishop to d4. And the problem is now you're forcing the pawn down to a1, and you're going to have to give up your rook, and that is a completely lost game. And you can't go here because this is going to be a fork. That is not good either. So you have to basically throw the bishop away, and then after we see rook takes e5, you got the rook over to a1. We do see the move a3. Why not push the pawn? I mean, you know, you got to try to do something. Get this pawn to a square that's protected. The a2 pawn is gone. It's a sitting duck. So we do see rook takes a2. We got the rook back to e8. We do see king to e2. We got bishop d6. We do see king to d3. Rook slides over to b8. We got knight down to f1. And the game is actually a little bit longer than this. So I'm going to kind of run through these moves a little bit so we can get to the important points. We got the move f5. We do see knight going to d2. We got king to g7. We do see king to d4. Pawn takes e4. We got pawn taking e4. Rook down to b2. Now, this isn't a problem because you do have this knight in a situation where it is going to be able to protect the b1 square, which is the queening square. So we do see rook taking b2, pawn taking b2. We got king down to c3. Bishop goes to f4. Knight goes to b1. We got bishop taking h2. We do see king taking b2. And basically, this endgame is basically dead drawn. I mean, it doesn't look that way because you're like, man, this looks kind of crazy. This pawn looks like it's going to kind of be okay against these two pawns. But if black plays this absolutely correctly, you will see a nice hold in this situation, even being down a pawn. We do see the move h5. We got knight to d2. We got g5. We see knight to f3. We got bishop to f4. So basically what you're going to be seeing coming up, just kind of summarize it for you. Basically, both sides are trying to prevent each side from like basically moving, making any progress. Now, at the end of the day, you know, chess is just as much about defending your opponent's ideas as it is implementing your own ideas. So sometimes you're thinking, hey, man, I'm just going to push forward because like I'm playing the game and it's just me. I'm the greatest, right? And so you're going to be missing what your opponent's doing. Your opponent might be like, you know, hey, man, they're building up a little position slowly, and then you lose the game. How many of you guys have been there? Raise your hand. Me. Yes, exactly. I've been there too. I just was there a minute ago. We do see king to c3. We got g4. We got knight going to h4. King goes to f6. Knight goes to f5. We do see king to e5. And this is kind of what I was talking about. You really don't want the king to get in here and kind of start moving its way up the board here. So we do see king going to e5, pressuring white. We got king to d3. Everything is all good so far. It's like dead even. Everything is good. So it's either one of these players' games to lose. We do see bishop back to g5. We got the move g3 trying to hold up black. We got bishop back to d8. We got knight down to e5, king to d6. We got knight to f5 with check, which looks kind of crazy because you're like, hey, this is a check. Checks aren't that great. I mean, unless you can really follow it up with a checkmate, I mean, they're just a check. We got king to e5. We do see knight down to e3. King goes to d6. We got knight to g2. We got bishop going to f6. And everything is still solid like I said before. I mean, we're pretty much, you know, in the same boat either side. Black definitely has to make sure that these pawns can never advance at all. So that is the key. Knight to f4, we do see the move h4. This does kind of force the situation a little bit, but Krisa is actually finding the really, really good moves in this position. We got pawn taking h4, bishop taking h4. We do see knight down to g2, because maybe black falls asleep and drops his bishop. You never know. But we don't see that. We got bishop f2, knight goes to e3. We got the move g3, and now we have to start kind of getting our king here, because at some point you're going to be trying to push the pawn like this. King to e2, we got king to e5. We do see king going over to f3. Bishop goes down to e1. We got knight to g4 with check. We do see king down to d4. We got knight to e3. And this is actually kind of a sneaky move. If you're not paying attention, knight to c2 with check can make your dreams become nightmares. So do not let that happen. So we do see king going back to e5. We got knight down to g2. We got bishop to d2. We got knight to h4. And then we actually see bishop to e1. And you guys see it. This is a game-losing blunder. The problem with this situation, it kind of looks like it's the same thing, right? If we go back a couple moves, like it's like, okay, that's like the same thing, right? I mean, it just pretty much looks identical. Well, the problem is now you have allowed Wesley So to maneuver his knight in such a way where they are going to be able to force material away from you, and that is absolutely 100% not what you wanted at all. We got knight to g6 with check, and that starts it. We got king moving over to d6. Knight goes down to f4. We got bishop to d2. And now the problem, we have knight to d3. And you have given up the important f2 square. So you might go back and look at knight to f4 and say, well, why don't I go bishop to f2? Like, I mean, that's like holding the pawn and stuff, right? Well, the problem is knight to d3 anyway. And you are forcing this pawn away. And you really don't have nowhere to go. You kind of can go down here, but you're going to be dropping the pawn anyway, so it's kind of going to end up be the same thing. So like I said, we did see bishop d2, knight went to d3, and now you kind of have nothing to do but just kind of run. We got bishop c3, king takes g3. Now you have gotten your pawn. Bishop goes up to d4, trying to prevent the king from coming over. We got king to f3, and basically Wesley So just casually, ever so slowly, walks his king all the way over to c4. And so we see this movement here, the little maneuvering, staying on the light squares, and then we do see this position here. And we are getting very, very close. We got bishop back to g7. We got e5 with check. We have the move king to d7. And then we have knight to c5 with check. And it is in this position that Krisa resigns the game. Now you might be wondering, okay, wait a minute. I could just go bishop takes e5, right? Like, I don't have to move my king away. Well, the problem is that loses too. If we did see bishop taking e5, you would be looking at knight taking e5, king taking e5, and then the king would come up. And you are going to get, I mean, you have two options. You could just continue to move the king up and the pawn up and just like win that way. Or you can just do a squeeze technique that we like to show. King to f6, you would probably see king to c6, king to e7. If you're trying to desperately get to d8, you would be looking at d6 with check and then king to d8. And then you would be looking at d7. And this does squeeze the king out of this square. There is no way to go here, so you have to step here, and then the king is going to come here, and it's going to support the pawn, and it is a done deal. So that is insane how this game was 80 moves, and you literally had kind of everything going on, and Krisa was holding for so long. This is kind of like a Magnus Carlsen thing. You know, Magnus will sit there and just squeeze you till you make that one mistake, and it's like, ha ha ha, got him. So all my people in the Philippines, Maraming salamat king makaibigan po sa nanonood ng king ma video. Muchas gracias para ver mi video, mis amigos. Hasta luego. Me quiero tell you my mind. I'm gonna see you guys next time.